Okay. All right. Well, welcome to our. Is this our last?
I think so.
I think so, yeah.
Our last group meeting. Okay. So today we're talking about the Ritz-Carlton case study, the hotel company, kind of how they go about opening a hotel, training, orientation, all that. So can one of you maybe give us just kind of a quick rundown of what the case is about?
I'll go ahead and start and have, I guess, just have like Ricardo pick up all the pieces here if I mess it up. But basically what it seems like is the case starts off kind of giving a history about the Ritz-Carlton, how it was founded, what exactly it is they do, and then talks about the guy, I think his last name is McBride, about how he's been really successful within the Ritz-Carlton like hotel chain. And he's like, they're just now opening one in Washington, D.C. And so right now they're struggling getting an entirely new staff put together, a brand new hotel, making sure they get everything ready to go because I guess people always expect the best from them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know if they'll be able to make it on time because I think their training thing is like only a week long. They have some name for it.
Yeah, 7 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
7-day countdown.
So he just isn't sure if he's going to make it.
Yeah. And I guess like kind of jumping from that or continuing from that, it goes into details like what the different days are for the 7-day countdown. I actually find it interesting how there's like a contrast between like the staff workers and the management. Like the service people, they're like, yeah, Ritz-Carlton, and then the managers are like, yeah, you guys suck. Like you guys need to pick up the pace and like you have to get that 5% up. And I don't know, I just find it there's that change there. And in the end, the dilemma, I think it was like if they needed to expand the training period or just do something completely different. And I just thought it was an interesting case this entire time. So.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that, talk about that 7-day training a lot here in a little bit. As we're getting started here, I know they kind of mentioned this, maybe not necessarily by name, I don't remember it saying that, but they kind of talk about like the competitive advantage. So what, if you were to define competitive advantage, what would it be and what does the Ritz-Carlton have that could be considered a competitive advantage over other hotels in the industry?
So I think that competitive advantage is something that makes, it's just that. It's an advantage that you like have over your competitors. So for like the Ritz-Carlton, they kind of have like the name and the prestige about it, kind of like Ferrari or Lamborghini. Mm-hmm. Like it's not that other people can't have similar products that are good, but they're just known as being like the best of the best. And so they can kind of use that name to attract business, whether it's like business conferences or hosting other sorts of events. And people just expect this to be this like incredible experience because of the name.
Mm-hmm. You know, I agree with that. Like that, their biggest competitive advantage is their brand name. It's the Ritz-Carlton. It just kind of the Ritz-Carlton quality service. That's what I feel like their competitive advantage is as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Thought, well, yeah, definitely it's the brand name, but what makes their brand name, worth anything? Because someone could be say, oh, this brand is really good, but if it's junk or the service is terrible, what really makes it is, and I know they kind of talk about too, is the people, is the service that they give. That's like really like, that's kind of what they're selling, is their service, to all the people that come and visit the hotel, that great experience, like you mentioned, Jared.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I know we kind of talked about this here. One of the questions says, service can be an elusive concept. What is the essence of the Ritz-Carlton experience?
Oh, I remember this one. They're like everybody's ladies and gentlemen. Like we're like ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And so just that status of everybody's like equal and like pretty much like have respect for each other is what drives their service that they have. And I find it interesting how like the dialogue that they say, like, can I come into your room? Can I do this? Can I do that? Thank you. I just find it interesting that all the terminology that they have there is, an essence of service there.
Yeah, it's like an elevated plane of service. Like here's like the normal service, and then there's like what they strive to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I was like one thing that kind of interested me is when he was saying is like we aren't servants, but we are in a service industry, and so kind of like made that distinction because I think a lot of time some people kind of like look down on that. And yeah, like what he's trying to say is like, no, like they are no different than we are. We just are performing this for them. And so, yeah, I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I like that too. Sometimes I feel like, yeah, you tend to look down on those that when they're providing that like real high level of service, they kind of feel like, I don't want to say service, but you know what I mean? They kind of feel like that service.
No,
so
exactly.
I think that was really kind of interesting how he made that distinction right off the bat to the new employees. You know, like this, we're pretty much going to do that job, but we are not servants. You know, so he wants them to think of themselves as higher class, or you know, so that way they can perform that service.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So now we talk about the ladies and gentlemen, you know, kind of aspect of high class service that the Ritz-Carlton offers. How do they create these ladies and gentlemen in only 7 days?
It's like hotel boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much what it is. I mean, it seemed like they had like this big hype meeting at the beginning where it's like they're playing, so they're playing Queen, you know, and it's like, hey, like you guys made it. We had all these, you know, thousands of applicants, and we're now down to you 400. So let's rock and roll. Get people all jazzed about like the Ritz-Carlton name, like the brand, how they're all going to work together, and it's going to be great. How they're going to just stomp everybody else, and then it just seems like they just like dive in, like to what like people's individual roles are.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I don't know what much more I could add to that, except that I feel like it should be a little bit longer than 7 days, but I think we'll be talking about that later too, eh?
Yes.
Yeah. Agreed.
So before we get to if it should be longer or shorter or whatever you think here, how would you describe the leadership and the values of the Ritz-Carlton? I know Jared, you kind of mentioned, you know, that bringing them out is kind of as a rock star management, like, you know.
Yeah.
Allison, how are you?
Hi, sorry I'm late.
It's okay. We're just plugging along here.
Okay, cool.
So let me just repeat the question here. We've kind of, real quick, we've talked about kind of analysis of the case, talked about the competitive advantage that the Ritz has, kind of how they create ladies and gentlemen in only 7 days, specifically how to do that. And now the question is, how do we describe their leadership and their values, of both like the management level and of the employee level? What are some of the strengths and weaknesses of how they go about doing this boot camp and whatnot?
Well, they definitely value that over, you know, the bottom line, because one thing that really stood out to me was how they wanted to make sure that that people were given the opportunity to do it right. Like they started out with 50% occupancy, I think, and then they like ramped it up. And I really thought that said a lot about what they valued.
Just can anybody point out some of the weaknesses maybe in this kind of leadership style?
Well, I think one weakness was the way that they like talk to the managers. I feel like the managers need some like pumping up too, because if they're like chewed out the entire time, and they kind of, you know, if they're chewed out the entire time, they need to be motivated to lead the people. Like they need to keep motivation going and just kind of keep that spirit that they had throughout the 7-day countdown. I don't know. That's what I feel like one of the weaknesses are.
I felt another weakness was just the 7-day countdown itself. It's just like, oh yeah, I mean, like kind of from the top down, this is going to be great, make it happen, make it work. And then when things don't go that way, it's when they get all upset. But they somehow expect people to just immediately pick up on everything that they're doing. So.
I didn't really get that impression, I have to be honest, because I felt like what I got from it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that this was like standard protocol and it had worked really well for them for several hotel openings. Did I misunderstand that?
It said that had gone well in the past. That was kind of like their bread and butter. But for some reason, it wasn't going well here. That's like what I was reading. So I was trying to figure out, like why wouldn't it go well?
Jared?
And then I was thinking, how in the world did it go well?
I don't think that I got that. I read it differently. I read it that this was a decision prior to the 7-day thing. So that this is what was going to happen. And Collins was trying to say this won't work in 7 days. And McBride was saying, well, this is what we've always done. So did I get the wrong feeling or?
Maybe I did. I'll pull it up.
No, I think everyone brings up valid points. It's kind of how you choose to read into it a little bit too. So let's Jerry, while you pull that up, let's go into that here.
Yeah.
So that's the 7 days here. So should McBride choose to lengthen that amount of training more than 7 days, or should they stick with the bread and butter, what they've done in the past, and make it? Why or why not? What do you guys think on that?
Well, I'm a firm believer in not, fixing something that's not broken. And also, I didn't like the fact that, the Millennium Partners, to me, they were out of place. They were a financer, not a manager, and they were trying to come in and be, tell them kind of what to do. And I think that they needed to remember that, what role there was. If they're coming in, they're, partnering with them, it's because they think that they have a good brand and they're good at what they do. So let them do what they're good at doing.
So you would say to stick with the 7 day plan and not change it, not extend it?
Correct. I think it would be really difficult to do that level of training and keep the vibe high any more than 7 days.
That's a good point.
I feel like that they actually should extend it more than 7 days. And I'm trying to find where it said here that I feel like I read somewhere that this 7 day training program, like it worked, but I think in another opening they said that they came very close for it not working. But I don't know. I feel like I read that somewhere, but I don't remember where I read it. Maybe you guys might remember where.
Yeah,
where it
I'm
is.
on page 11 under the 7 day countdown thing, reading it, because I'm not saying Allison's wrong, because I don't even know if I'm right either. That's what I'm trying to look up and see exactly and make sure I understand this correctly.
Yeah, and I'm totally good either way too. I don't, I was just saying that was the feel I got when I was reading it, but it was rather late when I was reading it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate these things. I literally do, and I'm always doing it at the 11th hour.
No, I feel
Just in the beginning, you said
the
the 7 day countdown was a result of the evolution of the hotel opening process. So it kind of seems like throughout the years they came up with this. So not that they've been doing it the entire time.
But I also felt like too that if they change, I think it says somewhere, if McBride changed it now, it would change like the protocol for all the rest of his openings, and he had another one coming up, and so I think that's something that was really key to me too. It's like he was not just making a decision for this hotel. He was, and I'm all for, because I've read lots of books all about standardization. If you want to have like a franchise or multiple, a chain or anything like that, really has to come down to standardization, and that has to be like standardization has to be like set in stone for it to really work. And so anything that he's going to do, and so he's talking about changing this protocol for their brand based on somebody that's outside of that scope and that's not their focus, and I just think I think he's second guessing himself when he shouldn't be.
I can agree with that.
Yeah. So as I continued reading, and I found on the very last paragraph of the case reading, it says that sometimes it seemed like they would barely made it under the wire for opening day. And I feel like it kind of goes back to like the shuttle one that we read about Columbia. Like they knew that there was a problem with the shuttle, but they kept pushing it, until one day it just, it blew up in the middle of the flight. So maybe right now it works for them, barely making it under the wire for opening day. And one day it's just not going to work. And then they're going to lose a lot of money. I just feel like they should just extend it.
I think it's kind of interesting because, like, at the same time, it worked in the past, like in that reading, they said they make it like a day or two before. That's kind of what they would want. They don't really want to have a whole lot of dead time because that's like lost revenues. But at the same time, it does. It's like, okay, if something does go wrong, then what?
Well, and so, I also felt like
what Collins is, but
yeah, I also felt like what Collins wanted was he wanted to make the training longer and then start out at a higher occupancy, because his was all about the bottom line, whereas Ritz-Carlton is all about their brand. And so I think it was just a matter of what's most important to us, the brand or making the most money right away. And, you know, and I think that's what the case study really came down to in my mind.
Mhm.
So let me ask the $1 million question here, or the $700 million question, I guess. So Millennial Partners is putting up what, like $700 million? What should $700 million buy in the way of influence? Should he have to say in changing it if he's putting up they're putting up that much money?
I think that it's that's fine. You know, you put a lot of money into it, but why are they willing to put that money on the line? Because they recognize that this is a good product. Well, why is it a good product? Either you believe in the product or you don't. You guys are all quiet.
Oh, I thought it froze for a second. I'm like,
I'm just like, you on that? Okay,
no.
So then, just a follow-up question for that is, they're kind of Ritz-Carlton experience is day one. I know since like when Mrs. Jones checks in, she's getting the Ritz-Carlton experience from day one, right? Do we really want to be learning at the expense of customers? Right?
See,
if it takes longer than
7 days wasn't long enough.
If it takes longer than 7 days and that person doesn't get that Ritz-Carlton experience, is that appropriate? What can we do to change that? Or what's your thoughts?
In my little write-up, I wrote that they should do the 7 or 10 days or something like that. But then part of their trial should also be like running the hotel for a week. Just mock trials. So they can kind of work through all those kinks. Because, yeah, if someone's paying that much money, the last thing that they want is for it to go poorly and have people be able to, do bad reviews and things like that for a brand new hotel.
Yeah, it's kind of make or break even those first couple of days, I think, right? Especially like your hotel. If you have the name right,
I think so.
The Ritz-Carlton, that's only the name itself is only going to hold you up so long if you can't provide that level of service that they're expecting.
But it wasn't that the whole idea of only having 50% occupancy was that it would give them the room and the time to do their job well and to still be learning it, but not have it at full capacity. It's kind of like, I'm thinking about like a restaurant, where a person is training, and so they're not going to put they're not going to fill all the tables in that section because that person is training and they have time to, fix anything that might go wrong and make it better. And it's just an opportunity to kind of, do that. And then as far as, Jared, you said like mock trial runs, I do believe that's part of the 7-day thing they said. So I think that I read
having it for, I guess, for just like a longer period of time.
A longer period of time. Okay. Yeah, I gotcha.
So let's say in theory we extend the training time from beyond 7 days, whatever it may be. How much, we're going to start, because normally they're going to start out with that kind of soft opening 50% occupancy rate, like we just talked about. How long, if we were to extend it, would it take to be able to handle an 80% occupancy rate?
I think what Jared said about 10 days, maybe even 2 weeks at the max would be good. If you could have like that 1 week of like a prep rally, like getting the spirits up, and then the 1 week of like actual like mock training and things, and then they'll be ready to go at the end of the 2 weeks.
I have to be honest. I don't care how long the training is. I would never feel comfortable at opening up with like full occupancy for any kind of business. I think that that's just asking for trouble.
Well, the hotel never reached full occupancy.
Right, but even for them, like, okay, so their full is 80%. I wouldn't feel comfortable opening day having 80% occupancy. I just wouldn't feel comfortable with that, no matter how long training or, whatever, because inevitably something's going to go wrong and there's going to be kinks, and it's still going to be the first real day, no matter how long your training was. You're still going to have that first day.
Sorry.
I love how he tries to shush a toddler like that's going to totally work.
Just a little bit. Time to go into the room.
Can't shush teenagers either. Just so you know. Like all the same.
Figured as much. Okay. Well, let's see here. What else do we want to cover here? I think we've kind of covered most all of it. Are there any principles from this week's reading from the book that could apply to these scenarios here?
I thought trust came in really big, loud, and clear. I think that, Collins clearly didn't trust the Ritz-Carlton to do what they were hiring them to do. And, and that came across loud and clear. And because of that, then McBride was second guessing himself. He felt the lack of trust and confidence in his abilities and their brand abilities.
Mm-hmm. So I guess, I totally agree with that, but I guess at this point, what can you do to kind of get that trust back? Is it just doing what they've been doing and kind of prove that it's a proven system? Or I guess, what do you think he can do?
I think that Collins is the one that needs to step back, which is what I put in my write-up. He needs to remember what his role is.
Step off it.
Yes.
That's funny.
But you got to do that tactfully, so that way you don't get the funding pulled from the new Georgetown one that's supposed to open up, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, and also, I thought that there was a lack of trust, too. This is another thing I just remembered. I didn't like the fact that the Millennial Partners had inked a deal with the competition, too. They inked a deal with 4 seasons. And I thought, well, what is that about? I don't know. I just didn't get a good vibe from this company.
I think that's just business. That's just hedging your bets. When I read that, I said, well, that's pretty smart. I mean, because now you have the 2 major competitors. Well, it's a win-win, right? I mean, they're either going to go to
they're doing that. They want their cake and they want to eat it too. They have their hand in a pot over here and they have their hand in a pot over here, and then they're trying to tell them how to do their job too. Right. I just didn't like them.
Yeah. It's interesting. When I read that, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I feel like it was a lack of trust as well. But I also do see how they also want to play it safe. Well, these guys do a bad job. I have another big name brand over here, but I don't know. I guess they're asking for conflict.
Well, that's an interesting gamble with that much money.
Kind of weird. I mean, it's like having McDonald's invest in Wendy's.
Yeah.
And it's well, I don't know.
I'm like, which brand do you believe in?
It did seem kind of strange. Yeah.
Well, I do like my Baconators.
Who knows?
So vote for Wendy's, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have any last comments? Otherwise, we'll kind of wrap it up here. This is kind of an interesting case study.
Yeah.
A good insight in how a hotel chain, a luxury hotel chain works. I mean, this isn't a Super 8 or Motel 6, and so it's kind of interesting to see the process of which they go through the hiring process, and it's kind of interesting, how many people applied. I said you have the same statistical probability of getting into Harvard as you did of getting a job at this.
Yeah.
You better have good benefits.
Yeah.
I have a feeling they do. Well, where's the rest of our group? We're really getting small, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, it's the last week of group meetings.
No idea.
So, yeah.
Oh, this is?
Is there one next week?
I have no idea. There is one next. I just was wondering, Jocelyn hasn't been around for a few weeks now, so I just wonder if she's still around or not. I just hadn't heard, from email or anything, so.
That's true.
Anyway.
Yeah, is there one next week? Let's talk about that real quick here.
Okay.
Do you have the list? I don't know. I can pull up my email again.
I think I can pull it up. Let me see.
I guess if we're done discussing the case, do we stop the broadcast or?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and stop it here.